Welcome back to another episode of Corralling the Chaos. Today, we are going to talk about women in events, which is not something we talk about as often as we should, especially with our industry changing and evolving, people leaving the industry, people coming into the industry, and it's just such a worthy topic. So to do that today, we've asked Anca Trifan from Trifan Events. She is the CEO and founder of that to join us to help us break this down. So welcome, Anca. Thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Angela. How are you?
I'm doing great, thanks. I'm excited to talk about this today, especially to have another woman on our podcast we always love. But I have to ask, so tell us about Trifan Events. Obviously, being a founder, that tells me you're a risk taker. You're passionate about doing something and solving things. So tell us what kind of led to you starting your own company and especially in the world of events.
Well, how much time do we have?
Whatever you need.
I feel like I have to go back to a bit of the beginning because I fell in love with AV while I was working in radio during my high school and college years. And I was actually studying computer science, but it was more of this AV sound engineering that became super attractive to me. And the combination of technology and creativity, it was something that spoke to me. And I was seeking opportunities in my own country, in Romania at the time, and there weren't none. I have this awesome talk about that story, how, I really wanted to volunteer. And, the owner of this production company that was hiring just guys just measure me up and down. It's like, what is this? Like little woman asking, like, go and do something else with your life, like get married, have kids. And I'm like, that's not really what I want to do. Thanks for the advice, right? So I decided to move to US with literally like $100 in my pocket to pursue opportunities in the AV world. And I started from the ground up. I was literally coiling cables in the beginning, but eventually I worked my way up to mixing sound for big names like Fergie, Linkin Park, Britney Spears, and even Michael Jackson at this one amazing 50th birthday party for Cristiano this year. He's no longer with us, but that was on top of the Peterson Museum in LA. And it was one of those unforgettable experiences. Sometimes I have to remind myself that I had some amazing experiences because you kind of forget, right? You move on through life, you do other things. So after years of working in that space, I think it was like 18 hours days, like nonstop, I burned out. So I decided to move to Portland, Oregon, where I transitioned into corporate events. But after some time, I realized that I wanted more control over my schedule. I was in the process of starting a family. So that's what led to founding Trifan Events. My goal was to build a company that allowed me to integrate my work and my personal life in a more seamless manner. I honestly don't really believe in work-life balance as event professionals. There is work-life integration. There's a way to find balance within that construct and blend both, feeling like I'm contributing into my skill set and my passion, but also finding some kind of normalcy in the crazy life and chaotic life of events. I love the name of the podcast, Corralling the Chaos. That sounds like our days every single day. So that's kind of like the beginning. And then the agency has transitioned a whole lot into AI technologies and consultancy because as a small business owner, I'm faced with a lot of unique challenges that a lot of other small businesses face, which is limited resources, a lot of complexities when it comes to adopting new technologies. And my mission is to simplify what does that look like and make it accessible and beneficial for businesses of all types, but particularly women in business or women agency owners or anyone that is looking for some kind of a tailored solution and education on AI, on technology, on AV. And a lot of that is through the means of podcasting, my own podcasting and Demystified, but also workshops, speaking engagements, courses, and all the things. And LinkedIn, a lot of LinkedIn content as well. Fostering that community of, abundance, of sharing, of I really am a big supporter of elevating others, because I feel like that's kind of like what elevates yourself as well. It's like, what's that saying that the tide lifts all boats in the harbor? I always mess up saying. So if it doesn't sound right, you can tell me. I'm okay with it.
So you went from being a freelancer, coiling cable,
Basically, yep,
to running sound, working with some very high-end names, to then starting your own agency. That is quite the path. Well, I think that takes guts. I always love the stories in our industries, because the number of people we meet that say they accidentally fell into starting their own business, right? They typically started working at a show site because a friend invited them, right? They needed extra hands to do something. And then they kind of caught the bug, right? And then they find themselves years later not being able to step away from the industry, despite the 18-hour days, despite the travel, despite the bad food on the road, despite all those things, right? People aren't in it for the money. They're certainly not in it for the schedule. They're in it because they're a part of building these really amazing experiences. And to see it go from an empty room to this incredible display is very satisfying. So it's a very common story in our industry. You know, a lot of our audience, it sounds like your audience on your podcast, Events Demystified, is the meeting planners, the marketers, similar, I'm assuming, for your agency too, right? You're working with a lot of the meeting planners. And I think Lasso, a lot of our audience, we certainly work with agencies too, is a lot of the production side, the heavy execution, event staffing, event production, the technical component of it. And it is very male dominated, that side of it. So it's interesting that you started on the technical production side, and then have since moved on to kind of run your own thing. So after being in the industry for so long, how should women go about having a career in a male-dominated industry while balancing, like you said, right? You showed up, they measured you up and down, they dismissed you like, hey, a woman can't do this job type of thing. But there's a lot of young women entering our industry, a lot, and it's really fun to see. So what advice would you have for those young women who are coming into the industry now? What advice would you have for them?
I want to back up a little bit, just because we're talking about, this industry being, not necessarily easy, and probably that's what's going to be the premise to the answer. But earlier today, my husband actually sent me this meme with a picture of, a heavy production stage, and then a banner. It says, "We do this not because it is easy, but because we thought it would be easy." So a lot of us probably we do get into it because it is fun. Like at a just bird's view, you see this amazing rock and roll, rock star lifestyle, and I've had plenty of that in LA, right? But the reality is, behind the scenes, there's those long days. And as a woman, especially coming into the industry, you might not know that that's the reality of it. And to be honest, a lot of women leave because they realize that it is hard. It's not easy. It's not an environment that is is very well fostering for a woman to be nurtured and really have a career, long-term career. The transition between being a freelance, a tech, and I wore all the hats. I went from sound engineering to lighting designer to video engineer to Vmix operator. I feel like COVID has threw all of us, in a spin. And you don't stay in this industry, like you said, to make money, because if I did, I would probably be rich doing something else. You stay in this industry because you have a passion for it, because you love the transformation that happens under your very own eyes as you're part of it. You love the people that you work with. And there's some, other characters that probably are harder to work with than others. I've had my own share, but for the most part, it is a career that you embrace because you have a passion for it. You have a fire that drives you. How do you find that fire if you are starting out? I always say you have to find your place within, the industry. There's things that you do better than somebody else, or you do best because of who you are, of your own innate skill set and talent, and of your own capacity to make an impact. I will start to finding what that is. And then if you can find your passion, I'll tell you, it will drive you through good days and bad days and not so good days. And in between all of it, you'll figure it out. For me, the transition to start my own agency, it came out of the need to have that work-life integration so that I can start the family, so I can have a baby in due time. And even though I'll tell you, like, I was on a ladder, like, kid you not, hanging illegal when my water broke. People shouldn't have to do that, but I am hardcore like that. And then I was right back to work. 2-3 weeks later.
I think that is the epitome of work-life integration. Literally standing on a ladder when your water breaks.
I'm like, what is happening? But you do have to learn to set boundaries. You have to learn how to manage your time efficiently. You have to make space for not just work, but also your personal life without feeling like you sacrifice one over the other. And those are some of the choices that I needed to make for myself. And one of those was, starting an agency and then realizing that you don't do less work. You actually do more work. Because now you have to go after the work, you have to plan it, you have to do all the work that goes into building a business on top of actually also running it, right? So it's not less work, it's more work, but at the same time, there's other benefits. How do we embrace this and then make it attractive to younger generations to join? That is, I think, the question of this century, because events are struggling the same way and on all sides. Like, it doesn't matter if it's event marketing, if it's event planning, if it's content management or whatever. Like, it's not just AV production that's struggling with trying to bring Gen Zers and a younger demographic into the industry. I think we're going to have to make some choices to change our ways as an industry to embrace, new leadership styles. A lot of the conversations that I have with women in events that are my age, they're used to just going through the motions and making it happen, no matter how hard or easy it is, because we've been raised like that. But that's not necessarily the truth, say, for someone that is just out of college, 20-year-old, and be like, I don't want to put up with this. Bye. See you next time. So there's definitely a different level of dedication to where do I draw the lines between I'm going to slave my life for this versus there's other options. And I think the responsibility falls on us as well to make it attractive and make it a space where it's safe and we can promote both dedication and professionalism and all the things that we are proud of in our 40s and over, versus loyalty is big, and knowing that you're going to show up when you say that you would and keeping your promises and all of those things. I've had, young crew members on my teams, and I'm looking at the clock and I'm like, they should be here and they're nowhere to be found. Like, where are they, right? It's a struggle. It can be hard, or levels of expertise that don't match reality, right? Or don't match the hands-on. There's a lot of new people in our industry, and then you realize, oh my gosh, they don't have the same capacity as I think that they would do, as much as they can, they speak to it. When it comes to, reality of doing it, it's a completely different outcome. Mentorship, that's where mentorship comes. And I know this is something that you're very passionate about. And so am I, through fostering a community of women behind the scenes in events and event technology and event production, because that's where we can have those one-on-one conversations. And then we can, by example, but also by, hey, don't do what I did. Here's what's a better way. If you're willing to learn, if you're willing to grow, we can provide the type of mentorship as mentor and mentee. I still have mentors myself to navigate some of the challenges early on and being able to, I guess, break into this industry while also finding some type of a integration, some type of balance. Allies are equally important, men and women who actively advocate for women in leadership roles. And that's something that I'm very strong on, because there's a lot of women, say, in AV productions, but how many are in lead roles? And right before we started taping, I was, asking the question. So, Angela, do you have some data on that? Can you tell sort of like what is the percentage of women in this marketplace that are in lead AV roles versus, say, their male counterparts? Not that we, say that men are better or women are better, but just to have an understanding at a percentage level, this is what we're dealing with. So that's why it's hard to even change the narrative. That's why it's hard for a woman to sometimes, work full time in this industry and then realize, well, what am I going to do if I want to start a family? Like, I won't have any, ability to either take time off, that's paid time off, or to have someone raise my baby. And I've had the struggles, raising my first son, that I felt like it was my nanny raising him, not me, because I would only see him on weekends. And I had to make a hard decision. Okay, this can be, going on, because it was hard to bond. I had those constant internal struggles with, I hated that I wasn't working when I was home, and then I was hating that I wasn't with him when I was working. So it was like such a conflict, it's like hard to find peace when you're struggling within yourself.
Gosh, you just said so much there I want to kind of come back to. And it is hard. And I don't think there is one right or wrong path. I think there's so many different variables. I travel a lot for work too, and I have kids, and I've been traveling since my kids were very young. And I had the same issue too, where I was like, well, wait a second, why is the school calling my husband when my kids are sick? Why aren't they calling me? I'm the mom, And the guilt that comes with that. There's so much guilt we have as moms who are working, certainly moms who are traveling, so much guilt around that. That's a whole other topic for another day that we could dive into. But when you think about, women who are considering a career in events, which means long hours, probably is going to mean travel. If you're moving into more of those lead roles, there's going to be travel that's involved in that. And you talked about kind of having boundaries, and then you later talked about drawing lines. And so I think that's really interesting, because I think everybody's line might be a little different, right? Depending on what their support system is, depending on what their own value system is. There's so many different things that go into that. So I think we as women are always looking for, at least I was like, I wanted somebody to tell me, just do this, or give me permission to feel a certain way or to do something. And unfortunately, as women, I just don't think there is a clear-cut answer, which is probably not encouraging for the women listening, that, the answer is, it depends, right? Versus like, no, just tell me how do I find this balance that everybody talks about? But you're right, there is no such thing as work-life balance, because you're right. When I'm at home, I'm thinking of work. And when I'm at work, I'm thinking of my kids. And so
that's where communities come into place so hard, because like, for example, I've had conversations with women that opened up about situations and things that they were going through. And I felt like they only were safe to do so because we nurtured a relationship. We nurtured this relationship within the community. And then they were able to talk. And then you'd be surprised how many other women would raise their hand and say, oh, I've encountered that too. Or what do you do if this? Or what do you do if this happens to you, right? So having those open conversations, because it's hard to have those conversations outside of a safe space, because you never know how that will be perceived. I'll give you the example of, I was on a stage a couple of years ago giving a talk about diversity in AV production. And to make a point, I had 7 different AV black shirts that I was given throughout the time when I was freelancing in different positions. And they were all supposed to be small. I'm a small 5 to 100-pound female, so everything has to be small to my size. Unfortunately, all of those shirts, I kid you not, 7 of them, they were supposed to be small, and they are varying sizes, and none of that was a woman's cut. All of it was men's cut, different cut, all the cuts, but something that would fit my body. And I was just trying to make a point. It's like, we're talking about diversity, but we're looking at this, and then you're supposed to make me feel confident wearing this on show side when it just flows. It's like it looks like a poncho on me, right? It starts with the event production company. It starts with them being inclusive and creating that inclusive environment for women, so that they're intentional about their hiring practices. They're intentional about providing growth opportunities. They're intentional about giving women a chance to lead in technical roles and being able to shadow so they can learn the way into the industry, right? They're intentional about mentorship and development programs and encouraging open dialogue and having a space where women can feel like they can talk. I was on another show site and I was on comm, and I left, for a few minutes to do something else. And then I came back, and then everyone on comm, that was all guys, were talking about parts of my body that shouldn't have been part of a conversation topic on comm. But they didn't realize I came back. So it's like little things like that they can either put you down or they can build you up. Now, I have a very thick skin and I'm also very feisty, so I'll fight back. You don't get away with stuff like that. But not everybody's like that, right? Somebody will shy away and they will be embarrassed to their to their very fiber of their being, and never again want to be facing those people ever again. So it goes back to us as agencies, as event companies, as clients, and then how do we provide those type of opportunities? I will tell you though, out of that conversation that I had a couple of years ago, I lost several AV partners because they were offended that I would come on stage, and not that I didn't point out names, but because that I would even mention that as being an inequality. And I was like blown away. I'm like, we're just having a conversation. We're trying to get this industry to move forward. And here we are, never to be heard from ever again. So that's not creating inclusive spaces or safe spaces for women to have a voice and to be able to feel welcome, to feel like they belong. I haven't belonged for a very long time in this industry. I always felt like the outsider because I was the only female on a crew with men all around. I've also had some amazing crews that I work with and some male mentors and allies in the industry that have really supported my growth and my path. But that's not always necessarily linear, right? It's not always the same. And I think finding the right people to surround yourself with, the right community, and then being able to advocate for yourself and speak up are important things that, as someone that's new, you need to develop. You need to find the confidence to be able to do those things. And then personal branding is important as well, being known for the things that you do, not how you look, and the skill set that you have.
Agreed. So Anca, tell me about some of the women in our industry that inspire you.
I love that question. I actually had an entire season 6 on the Events Inside podcast, where I had the opportunity to highlight some incredible women behind the scenes in event production. And these are women that are often the unsung heroes of our industry. They're managing the tech, the logistics, they're managing behind the scenes or front of scenes, they're managing so many different things. And many of those are also hands-on running things. I always love to be someone that's hands-on, even though a lot of the things that I do now involve a lot of planning and logistics and operations. I put myself in a mixing positions, like I mix every week just to not lose my chops. I run virtual events and VMix operating every other week. I like to stay fresh. So those are the women that inspire me, the ones that will never stop growing, will never stop learning. And those are the stories that I get like the chills, right? Because are stories of resilience and leadership that really can inspire anyone, no matter where they are in their journey. They remind me that women belong in these roles, and they continue to drive me to advocate for more representation in AV and event production and AI and technology and all the things.
Yeah, all the things that are evolving. Well, that's great. So you've obviously done a lot of things in the industry. It's really kind of amazing all that you've done, starting with coiling cables to now you're kind of running your own business. So you've really seen a lot, both behind the curtain as well as in front of the curtain, now kind of orchestrating things on that side. But what would you say is your proudest moment that you've had in your career in the events industry?
I feel like there is this book in me that's going to come out eventually. And I even had a title for it from all the stories and all the, moments in this, 20 some career. And it's called Breaking the Sound Barrier. But I'm like, I just cannot find the time to actually finish it. But if I were to point to one moment, I think it was definitely going back to something that I mentioned earlier, right in the beginning. I've never saw myself as someone that would, be put in a position to make sound for legends, for like someone like Michael Jackson. And it just happened that I was working for this production company down in LA, and we were doing everything that had to do with production for all the runaway shows and all the parties that this fashion designer Cristiano Digier that was running the Ed Hardy and all the other fashion lines, and we did his 50th birthday bash, and it was so unreal, like so surreal to be in the same space with all the celebrities. I mean, I'm nobody from Romania. I just happened to be in LA. I'm speaking with an accent. I don't know, a lot of people. But it was such a high profile event, and obviously the pressure was high. But also to have, this microphone and hand it to this legend, and then be able to run the levels and mix it just right. It's somewhere on YouTube on a very, very crappy low quality because it's like 200, who knows? It's like thousands of years ago. But it was a realization of like how far I came from this, young girl begging to be allowed to play with the big boys and do AV, from coiling cables and running all the things to being able to do something that it was phenomenal, once in a lifetime, really opportunity. It was one of those career defining moments that reminded me why I love this industry so much, but also how we shouldn't put limits on ourselves. Like, we should dream big and go after the things that we want to do. And then that becomes, the fire that will drive you to pursue whatever it is that you want to pursue. And that might look different for you as it does for me. Also, it might look different stages of your life, but never stop dreaming and pursuing the things that you're passionate about.
I think that's so great. You definitely have, a number of proud moments across your career. So that's great. When you think about young women who are either just getting started in this space or who are out there maybe considering starting their career in the event space, what one piece of advice would you give them?
So much to say. Take up space and advocate for yourself. Don't be afraid to step into leadership roles and showcase your expertise, even if you're not 100% there and ready. As women, we want to be 100% sure on our skill set and on our ability before we raise our hand. And that's not always the case when it comes to our male counterparts. They would know 40% of what's going on. They raise their hand and then they're like, I'll do it. I'll figure it out. We want to be sure. We want to have all the details. We want to know all the things. But the industry is evolving too fast to allow room for always knowing everything or always having all the details or always being the smartest person in the room. You might have to figure out as you go. And if you want to thrive in technical roles, in leadership roles, then don't be afraid to go as you are and then ask questions and then stay curious and then keep learning and surround yourself with the people that will support and uplift you. There's so many more things to say, but I think those are the things that I hope you can take from all of this that was said. Take up space, advocate for yourself, keep growing, keep learning, stay curious, and allow other women that come behind you to also lead the way and give space for them as well.
I love all of that. I especially what resonates is you're right. Women feel like we have to have all the answers before we can move. And we're really great multitaskers. We can move and ask at the same time. I'm sure you didn't have all the answers when you started Trifan Events.
Probably that was the good thing.
if there's nothing else about women, we are resourceful and we figure it out. And so I think that's a really great piece of advice to kind of leave our audience with. And I really appreciate you joining us. I hope our audience out there will begin to follow you, listen to your podcast called Events Demystified. But where else can they find you?
I'm on LinkedIn, on Instagram. Those are you want to see behind the scenes, Instagram. You want to see the more professional, what I'm passionate about, definitely LinkedIn. I will say probably I'm the only event professional that has no problem also showcasing mental and physical fitness and my bodybuilding journey and being the deadlift CEO that is really passionate about that side, our mental, physical side. And being vocal about it, how important it is, especially in an industry that looks at burnout as one of the largest challenges.
That's a whole other topic too. I'd love to have you back to talk about burnout because that is a real thing in our industry. But thank you so much for sharing your insights and your journey. I know there's a few things I took from it. I know there's many things that our audience will take from it. So thank you so much for being part of the podcast today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Well, thanks everybody for listening. If you like what you heard, don't forget to hit subscribe and reach out to us with any questions, comments, or feedback at podcast@lasso.io. Thanks, everyone.